So everyone's heard of the same relationship truths that people treat like they're as if they're freaking gospel. But to be honest, in my opinion, a lot of these truths that you hear in the internet by therapists and so on are certified shit. But a lot of people believe this stuff pretty blindly. I mean, if I look at a lot of my clients, they believe this stuff blindly when they first come into the program. And I also believe in them blindly myself at one point in the distant past. And a lot of people have no idea why these are gospels, these are truths. And to be honest, if I look back at my own journey, I believed it because some wise looking old guy said it, but it's these truths that have been existing for a long time, but nobody really questioned why they even exist, or why they're even true. Like back then, people believed the earth was flat and nobody really questioned it. And we know these truths, these gospels are freaking BS, because if you look at relationships today, we are no happier today than we are 100 years ago, despite these gospels. And if these gospels don't work, so something is really wrong with that picture there. So my community put together a series of the most common gospels out there. And me, a relationship expert, is going to go through 6 of them in this video, and we're going to certify it whether the advice is BS or not BS. So this is going to be very different than our usual videos. It's going to be a really fun one, I think, guys. So let's start with the first one that I know every human being, every adult on the planet has heard before. It's communication is key. And let me just start with this, okay? Communication is not key. Safety is key. So I want you to think about communication like pipes that exist between two people. If safety is there, that means the pipes are clear. Then communication can happen. If the safety is not there, pipes are blocked, communication cannot happen. Even if you try to willpower your way to communication and force communication to happen, it just cannot get there. It just bursts the pipe entirely. And this distinction is so crucial, guys, because I see so many people using this insight and just destroying their marriage even more. So here's what usually happens, right? Usually the people who say this are the people who are dealing with a partner who's not really communicating very well. So they may see some either lies of omission, sometimes even lies of commission, sometimes even the lack of ability to express, or maybe some resistance. So expression, but not in a correct format. Maybe they're angry, maybe there's a bit of sarcasm. And so they're looking at their partner displaying these behaviors, not communicating. And they say to their partners, right, hey, a good marriage is all about communication. And so they essentially force their partner to communicate with them, but they don't understand that forcing someone to communicate is actually going to worsen communication. And here's a cycle that usually happens. So as we say, right, usually relationships break down because of a lack of safety. That leads to the pipes being blocked. And so that leads to either low communication or ineffective communication. And then when you see this ineffective communication, you force that communication even more, which destroys even more safety, which adds the need for more self-preservation, which leads to either lower communication or worse communication or more ineffective communication, and makes it harder to communicate. And this cycle just repeats and repeats and repeats. And once you see, guys, that safety is really the key, not really communication. If you want to improve your communication, you improve safety. You'll see this everywhere. And this is a distinction that's super important, and which is why in my program, we really stress the value of creating safety, and we forget about this stupid advice like communication is key in forcing yourself or your partner to communicate. It's all about when you create safety in the relationship, when you change your environment to feel safer and create emotional safety and psychological safety, you're essentially killing the pipes, and you'll find that communication becomes much more effortless, much more easy, and you'll find yourself expressing to each other a lot more. And so if you want to unlock communication again, you unlock safety first. You cannot unlock communication directly. So let's put this first thing to bed of communication is key as certified bullshit advice. Instead of trying to focus on getting better communication, you need to create safety. Safety is number one key. And if you like this, guys, we'll make more of this series, but comment below on some advice you've been getting out there that makes you kind of go, that's a shitty advice, right? Comment below. I would love to kind of rate it BS or not in a future video. And number 2, guys, is the notion that money and success is the key to a happy marriage, that women only care about money, success, power. And, you know, when people talk about self-improvement, for example, right? I hate these comments, right? When people talk about improving yourself, they only talk about going to the gym. They only talk about getting more money, getting a better job, but no one ever focuses on the higher level pillars like emotional safety, self-actualization, stuff like that. If this is true, right? If it's true that money and success is the key to happiness, then the thing is, I only enroll people who are usually very successful in their career. In terms of money, success, and power, they have it. So if this is true, then I should be dead ass broke right now. I should not be having any clients right now. But I see that, in fact, sometimes the more success, the more power, and the more money you get, the more unhappy the relationship becomes. So how the fuck can that be true? So there's three angles that we can look at this with. Number one is that, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, right? These are the basic human needs that all human beings, male or female, gay or lesbian, they need, right? You want all these 5 things. So if you look at money and success, at best, they only serve the lower pillars. At best, maybe safety, right? You're giving some financial safety, some basic survival safety, and maybe even love and belonging when you really stretch it. Like if you say, well, the money and success is leading to that feeling of love and belonging because I can buy her gifts, I can buy her vacations, whatever it is, right? Maybe to that level, but it definitely does not serve the higher pillars than that. If I look at my own life, for example, my wife actually became a lot more unhappy once I started to make a lot more money. And this is second angle is that, the world today isn't like what it was in the 90s or 80s, right? Women today, they can vote, they can earn their own money, they have a lot of freedom. In terms of like the lower level needs, I don't know about you, right? But a lot of women nowadays, they don't actually need a man's help to get those lower level needs. Even if you go back to hunting and gathering days, or not even that far, to just the recent like 70s industrial revolution, whatever it is, right? When women cannot vote, women cannot work, women cannot have like very high paying jobs, and women were not given the same type of education, for example, right? These lower level needs, men getting success and power, was both necessary and sufficient. But now in today's world, they're still necessary, yes, don't get me wrong, but they're no longer sufficient anymore. Another way you can look at this too is also in terms of value. So if you ask yourself the question, for example, how many men of this, 3.5 billion men out there, how many men can serve this lower level pillar of having a lot of money or enough money, success, and power? Think of that number, right? Now, how many men have money, success, power, but also can give the higher level pillars? That number just shrunk by a factor of a lot. Then you ask yourself, well, what is the definition of value then? Is something valuable something that's more common or more rare? Obviously, something that's valuable is something that's more rare. If you talk about high value then, it is much, objectively speaking, much higher value for you to be able to become a man who can not only serve the lower pillars adequately, but also serve the higher pillars as well, than if you just double down and over-invest in these lower pillars, but never invest in the higher pillars. Now, does that mean that women do not want successful men anymore? No, that's not what I'm saying, right? They do. They do want men who are successful. And again, that's why I say it's necessary, but not sufficient. And in fact, if you learn how to create the higher pillars, you'll find that the threshold of what they need on the lower pillars gets lower. So for example, my wife, right? My wife, when we first started making a lot more money, my wife said to me, I would rather you earn less money, us earn way less money, and me to get the high level pillars that I lost because you're over focusing on the business, than us getting more money but losing those pillars. And it's also really hard when you learn how to create the higher pillars for you to also not be successful, have your money, have your power, have your success. Because if you look at what it takes to be successful in whatever career you're in, whether you're in a creative field, in a technical field, whatever it is, right? If you understand how to master the soft skills and operate from that place of abundance yourself, you'll find that people gravitate towards you. Promotions gravitate towards you. People want to work with you. People want to become like you. People want to be closer to you. And that is the recipe to success in all parts of life. And the thing you have to understand too is that women look at success, money, and power, and they're not attracted to those things per se. They're attracted to what they symbolize. When a man has a lot of money and power, for example, the assumption, and it's a very subconscious assumption that women will never say, but what they'll think in their head is if they can get money and power, then they must have enough masculine energy to get that money and power. And that's the masculine energy that can make a feminine feel very safe. But safety is the key ingredient behind this still. You see this also when you have a guy who's very rich with a lot of money, with a lot of wealth, with a lot of power, a lot of success, and their partner gets attracted to them at first, but then they realize that all that money, that power, that success didn't come from their ability to create safety. And that once they've stopped feeling safe, despite all the money and power, whatever it is, the woman walks away. The attraction goes away. Why is that? Because again, it's not the money and power they're attracted to. It's the safety. It's a symbolism that this man is someone that can create safety. But once that facade, that visual optical illusion is broken down, the woman walks away. Attraction goes away. You see that? So feel free to look up my videos on this topic. If you want to look up my name, so Geoffrey Setiawan High Value or Geoffrey Setiawan Attract, You can find a lot of videos that I've done, but this goes more in depth into this issue. But again, if you look at this notion of money and power equals success in relationships and marriages, or whenever you try to work on yourself, work on going to the gym, making more money, getting a better job, and if you have a lot of money that solves all the problems, that is certified fucking bullshit. That is actually going to make you so much more unhappy and so much more a failure in this dating life and the long-term marriage space as well. And that's why we prioritize safety so much, is that when you create safety, right, you're creating such a important baseline, important foundation to allow the higher pillars, to allow the higher level needs to be fulfilled in your relationship. And the third one is really about this concept of sexual polarity and how there should be defined gender roles of what is masculine, what is feminine. And there's so much rhetoric, so much literature out there around the fact that sexual polarity, the polarity between masculine and feminine, is the key to attraction. And I think that's also freaking bullshit. And I used to believe in this too when I watch a lot of videos and read a lot of books out there. And to be honest, this whole concept of sexual polarity only made my own relationship so much worse. So I'm not saying here for us to accept gender fluidity, like all these LGBTQ plus movements. I'm not talking about that right now. What I'm talking about though is what I call the cups and water analogy. Okay. So I want you to think about this. Think about your masculine and feminine states almost like cups, right? So the cups represent the capacity for how masculine or feminine you can get. The water inside the cups represent the amount of each that you choose to embody. So for example, a lot of men, right, because they've grown up in this space, in this culture where they have to be acting like men. They have, they cannot be feminine. They have to be men all the time, right? They have massive male masculinity cups, but tiny, tiny, tiny femininity cups. And a lot of women are the opposite. They are trained to be very feminine, so they have very large feminine cups, but very tiny masculine cup. And this can create a shit ton of havoc. Because in my own life, for example, the feminine side of myself was very tiny when I was growing up. And so I had very little empathy. I had very little capacity to understand, to read faces. My capacity for displaying softer skills was very low, right? So how many men do you know today, right, when they're at work, they can be very successful, they can be very competent, but when they're at home and they have to listen to their kids express their emotions and they have to relate and show empathy and kind of talk gently and softly to their kids, they have a problem with that. When their kids want to share with them something that is more sensitive, something that is more deeper, more like emotions based, they don't know what to do anymore. They don't even feel comfortable having the conversation. Think about having the conversation with your wife when your wife is telling you a lot of bad feelings that she's going through, a lot of like the woo-woo feelings that a lot of men say, right? A lot of men can be very successful at work, but they can't do that at home. They have no empathy, they have no soft skills, they have no capacity to understand because, again, their feminine cups is so tiny. And also, for me, it led to a lot of fewer or robbed me of so many shared experiences and so many values that I had with my wife. Because, like, my wife, I don't know if you've seen a picture of her. Let me show you a picture of her somewhere, right? She's very feminine in looks, but also in her personality, right? She's very feminine. I found that for us, because she trended towards feminine conversations, feminine activities, feminine hobbies, feminine values, feminine way of life, and feminine ways of thinking that is more go with the flow, I found that I did not really appreciate whatever she did. I could not share the same experiences. We were kind of growing apart a lot most of the time, and we're doing more and more things separately. And even when we come back together, when we chat about it, when we talk about it, we can't really talk about it because I couldn't relate to what she was feeling. In the same way, because she was very feminine, she can't relate to me in my masculine endeavors too. So, when you see a couple that has two people where they can't really talk to each other, they can't really relate to each other, they kind of grow apart eventually, and they don't feel like interested in each other's lives, this is what's happening because their cups are very different. And it also creates a lot of rigidity and less adaptability too. So, if you look at survival of the fittest principles, right, it's all about the ones who survive and thrive are the ones who are able to be adaptable. And so how many men do you know today, again, can be very successful at work, but when they bring work home? Because again, they are not able to be fluid in the way they display their masculine and feminine to be able to allow them to be fluid throughout the day, throughout their phases of life, etc. It's a big, big problem. And in fact, right, if you really want to believe in this concept of sexual polarity, you cannot really have polarity if you don't grow both your cups. Because again, a lot of men, right, they are subtly destroying and killing their partner's femininity. Because again, whenever their partner shows feminine grace, femininity that really warms your heart, warms your feelings, they're subtly judging it. They're subtly like attacking it because they can't relate to it. So for example, let's say, your partner puts on makeup and she tends to be late to stuff because she's putting on makeup for a long time. When you tell her, can you please hurry up? You are destroying that side of her that wants to express herself, that wants to put on makeup, that wants to beautify herself for you. For example, imagine it like a coin. You have two sides of the same coin. You have the positive side, you have the negative side. Often what we do is that because we don't really understand, we don't really relate to the feminine side that we have not nurtured, we tend to judge the negative sides of the feminine. But when we judge the negative sides of the feminine, we also destroy the positive sides too, because we just destroy the whole coin. So be careful of this, right? Your inability to embody both is what usually destroys that polarity in the first place. So what I teach my clients instead is you have to learn how to become someone who can grow both cups. Now, I'm not saying, right, you need to become equally feminine and masculine at the same time. All I'm saying is that grow both cups so you can choose and decide for yourself what a particular moment needs of you. So there's some moments when I need to be more feminine, I can be more feminine. If there's some moments when I need to be more masculine, I can be more masculine. I can fluidly move between both. And like what they say, right? True power and freedom is not being who you are and avoiding who you're not. True power and freedom is about becoming whoever the fuck you need to become to get to where you need to be. That is true power and freedom. So a lot of people have this issue of authenticity, right? Well, I am a man. I am a masculine guy. To me, that's enslaving yourself. You saying that is enslaving yourself. To me, I would rather grow both cups. And if situation needs me to be more masculine, I can do that. If it needs to be more feminine, I can do that too. That is living a life of true freedom for me. And I feel competent, I feel confident, I feel comfortable in any situation you put me into. So not only am I not accidentally destroying her feminine sides that I love so much, but I'm also allowing her feminine sides to grow and blossom as well. Because whenever she's giving her feminine expression, I can also relate to that. And I can also understand that. And I'm actually enabling and encouraging those sides to blossom as well. And when you unlock the skill, guys, that will unlock a lot more effortless success from you. And this is the key to enriching your relationship beyond what you thought was possible. Number 4 is the rise right now in philosophies or advice that encourages polyamorous relationships or new structures. Like, people are considering more and more now open relationships. People say, for example, humans are not meant to be with one person. Or this is also manifested in sometimes when I see people give up on their current marriage too early, when they say, for example, oh, if a marriage feels hard, then we're not meant to be together, so let me find a new one. And I think people are thinking about this in all the wrong ways, to be honest. And they're trying to solve this problem in all the wrong ways. So the problem is that right now, people are thinking of changing the structure, not process. So if something is, they're unhappy in the relationship, they're not asking themselves, how can I change the process of how I conduct myself in the relationship, but how can I change the structure of how I do relationships in general? So maybe I don't believe in monogamy anymore, but maybe I believe in polyamory. Maybe we need to explore an open relationship and so on. And I always say, if you have the right process, then you will thrive under any structure. If you have the wrong process, you will struggle under any structure. And we see this with people who keep job hopping, for example, right? They find one job one, they're unhappy, so they say, not meant to be. They go to job 2, happy for a while, then they become unhappy again, and they repeat for 3, 4, 5. And we also have a lot of people in our program too who kind of abandon the program after doing it for like 3 months, 6 months, because they realize like, oh, you know what? Saving this marriage is too hard, so let me just start a new one. And in the short term, these guys who abandon the program, they laugh at us because they say, oh, I met someone new. It's really great at first. We're in the honeymoon period at first. For the first 6 months, a year, 2 years, it can be amazing. But then we often get these people coming back to the program after they laugh at us the first 6 months because they realize, shit, I'm breaking down that relationship, the new relationship, in the same way I broke down the first one. And sometimes these breakdowns can really take 2 to 5 years to really play out. The same way the breakdown of your first relationship also took 2 to 5 years to really play out usually. And I want you to remember this, guys. The grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greenest where you water it. So if you have your lawn right now and your lawn grass is turned brown and you look at another lawn that is untouched and you go like, hey, let me go to that lawn. It's very tempting and very easy to jump over the fence go to the other lawn and laugh at the people in the brown lawn going like, ha ha. But if you haven't really learned the right process to create safety, admiration, alignment, the 5 pillars, you haven't made the internal shift to allow you to effortlessly create the 5 pillars too, your grass, your green grass right now will eventually turn brown too. Because you need the right process of watering your lawn, of growing your lawn, of maintaining your lawn. So we always have this saying in our program, don't waste the pain. And the thing about relationships, guys, is that it has an inherent problem of delayed cause and effect, right? And because of that, it leads to a lot of people learning the wrong lessons from their pain. A key example of this is like someone breaks up, right? Had a bad breakup. And then the lesson they learn is, oh, I will never give my heart to a woman again. I will never be vulnerable again. I will never do this with a woman again, right? So what happens? They carry all that, the wrong lesson to the next relationship. They're not able to be vulnerable in the next relationship. And eventually, that lack of vulnerability, because of the wrong lessons, leads them to break down the next relationship. So please be careful of this. So what my clients think about instead is like, if your grass is brown, learn to become a better waterer, better gardener of your own lawn, not only for you to be able to make that brown lawn green, but also once you learn how to garden, you'll realize that you learn also how to really upgrade your garden beyond just having grass. Now you can have shrubs and trees and flowers, all these things, right? But if you keep, whenever you see your grass is brown, you keep hopping over to a green lawn, yeah, you will get this initial spike, initial good feelings, but you can never feel what it's like to have a full-fledged garden, right? With trees and shrubs and everything like that. So for all my clients, right? They join the program always having reconciliation as the number one goal, as the highest goal. But if you look at a lot of my client stories, you'll realize that once they join the program, once they learn how to actually grow their grass, but also how to actually garden like a pro, they'll realize that reconciliation is a side effect now, that they're looking and aiming for higher, bigger satisfaction, bigger wins, higher levels of fulfillment than just reconciliation. The pros and cons to this is that learning the right process does take time. It does take a lot of pain. It does take a lot of introspection in the short term, but you stand to gain a lot more in the long term. If you want to waste the pain, right, that's very easy to do. You can just find a new relationship tomorrow if you want to. But again, if you look at it in terms of like 5, 10, 15 years from now, you're limiting your capacity, your potential for how much fulfillment, how much growth, how much happiness you can get from your relationship side of your life. So think about that, guys. So all these conversations around changing structures, open relationships, polyamorous stuff, plenty of fish in the sea kind of quotes, I say fucking bullshit. Learn how to garden. Learn the process. Don't keep changing structures. Learn the freaking process. Number 5 is the saying of you can't change people and it takes two to tango. That is the biggest fucking bullshit that I've ever heard. And we can look at this 2 ways. We can look at this philosophically. We can also look at this scientifically as well. So philosophically, sure, you cannot change people, but you can change the environment, which then the environment, when you change that, it can change people's behaviors as well. And the thing is that if you don't believe this, you already did this. You already saw how you can change the environment and how the environment can change other people too. Because right now, that's been happening in a negative direction, right? So what you do affects the environment in a negative way. You destroy safety, for example, and you destroying safety makes your partner a lot more self-preserving, leads to a lot more like toxic behaviors too. Because when you guys first met, I bet you weren't that mean to each other because of that dissent building, that bitterness building, that baggage building. Eventually, both of you are just very different people now. So you can change your environment. You have been changing the environment, and the environment in turn changes people. That is already freaking happening. So if it's going in a negative direction, how come it can't go in a fucking positive direction? Which I don't understand, right? In that case, it didn't take 2 to destroy the marriage. Why does it need to take 2 to save a marriage? It makes no sense. And you can look at this scientifically too. So there's so many studies right now on how environment changes behavior. You have like Stanford prison experiment, for example, right? And I've actually been working on a book as well. And I've been working a lot of neuroscientists in the space and studying this field called gene methylation. And that is basically when we're born, right? Our genes have the capacity to do a lot of things. And when we're born, the genes are either on or off. So the different on and off switches makes the totality of who we are, our personality, for example. So if you are, let's say, a lot more creative, or one person is a lot more logical, right? It's not that their genes are saying, oh, your gene is built to be more logical or more creative, right? It's actually just that maybe the gene for creativity is off in the off position. But that doesn't mean that the gene cannot eventually become on. So gene methylation is basically the study of the genetics on and off switches. And increasingly what we're seeing is that the environment really changes people on that DNA on the genetic level. So for example, back then, people used to think that, whenever you have a genetic predisposition for something, then you are that person. That's who you are as a person, and that creates behavior. So genes create behavior, right? But now we're seeing something different, which is that if you change someone's environment in a big way, for example, if you put someone in a very dangerous situation, or if you put someone in a very safe situation, that change in environment can actually change your gene's ability to either create more oxytocin or vasopressin receptors, which is the hormone. But now we're realizing that the equation doesn't begin at the genetic level. There's actually a lot of things you can do to change their environment that actually changes your genes. So when people place adults in a very different environment, maybe they go from a very unsafe environment to a very safe environment, they actually change the on and off switches in their genes. They actually change them on a genetic DNA level, right? And this can be measured, quantifiable. So all this is to say basically that when you change your environment, right? People always say you can't change people, but when you change your environment, you can actually not only philosophically, but scientifically, biologically change people and their makeup on the freaking DNA level if you change their environment. So don't underplay the effect that environment has on behavior. So this whole advice around it takes two to tango, you can't change people, fucking bullshit. We see it all the time. We see it scientifically. We see it philosophically. And to be honest, it's just a bullshit excuse that people give whenever they are not able, they don't have the ability or the will to learn how to change their environment in a positive way. So let's not believe this bullshit. Guys, let's be honest. There's a lot of bad relationship advice out there. Advice that often sounds really great on the surface, but when a lot of my clients run to these programs and they follow these great sounding techniques, it actually makes things worse for them. And that is why I do what I do. And for the last 10 years, I've made it my mission to cut through the mountains of bullshit that is out there and show you how the real pros do it. And not only have I lived this myself, I walked this path, but I've also let thousands of my clients walk through the same path. And often when the situation feels extremely dire and hope is long gone. And if I were to guess, if you're watching this video, your family, your marriage, your relationship means a lot to you right now. And I agree. There's nothing in my life that is more important than my relationship with my close ones. So if this resonates, click subscribe, hit the bell button as well, and share this with someone who needs it. And join me in my mission to make marriages and relationships great again. Let's fucking go, guys. The last one, guys, is when you weaponize labels, when you weaponize what is otherwise good advice, and I call these the woman R guys, for example. So we have to understand that science has three weaknesses. Number one is that science, when it comes to behavior, is mostly correlational, not causational. So let's go hard and be controversial here. Let's take a look at something like ADHD or depression. When you go to a doctor and they try to diagnose you for depression, they may even look at your brain scans and see, oh, you have lower activity in this part of your brain. You meet certain criteria, whatever it is. Well, how do they know that that lower activity in that part of your brain is because you have depression or because you just don't know how to see life in a happy way, how to interpret life in a happy way, how to control your mind, how to manage your emotions, how to manage your voices in your head? And I used to be one of those kids, guys, who was on meds all my life because my doctor diagnosed me with depression, with bipolar, anxiety disorder, right? I had all these issues with myself and I was taking pills for early part of my life. And so I realized that, hey, the doctor can't really tell me what I have or don't have, right? For all I know, a lot of the depressive hormones that are surging through my body is not because my body is wrong, my body is faulty. It's because I didn't learn how to actually control my mind. People with ADHD, right? Sure, you have ADHD tendencies, but is your ADHD maybe caused by the fact that you are fucked up in your body? Or is it because you have not learned how to live a low dopamine mind, and so your spontaneous thoughts are flying like crazy? And the same thing when you look at advice like the Four Horsemen, for example. So Gottman says, right, stonewalling, contempt, and all the Four Horsemen leads to a higher chance of divorce. Is a Four Horsemen, is it a cause or an effect? Because to me, right, if your partner is stonewalling, if there's a lot of stonewalling, a lot of contempt, what do you need to do? That is a sign of lack of safety. So the lack of safety creates contempt, creates stonewalling, creates gaslighting that eventually leads to the end of the marriage. But the good thing is that the safety is actually within our control. The four horsemen is not. And the problem this leads to is when people are basically using advice to label who they are, who other people are, and essentially unknowingly creating self-fulfilling prophecies. So for me, on the level of the self, I used to really believe that I was depressed. I had all these issues with my brain. I have a thyroid issue, for example. I have all these issues and I was taking meds. And for me, believing this made me less confident. And the less confidence I have, the more anxious I became. The more anxious I became, the more tired and more depressed I became. And the more depressed I became, the more I believed that I was depressed. And the more I believed that I was depressed, the more insecure I became. And the cycle just creates this very vicious self-fulfilling prophecy. But also, I call these guys the women are guys because they always say like women are assholes, women are bitches, whatever it is. And they don't understand how them taking that advice and it's creating this self-fulfilling prophecy where the more they label people, the more worse it gets. Because like, let's say you think women are bitches. So you go into your relationship thinking and acting as if women are bitches. That creates less safety. Less safety equals to more self-preservation on the partner's side. More preservation equals more toxic behaviors. More toxic behaviors makes you think women are bitches even more, which makes you act and think more like women are bitches. And this cycle keeps going. And this guy will find that women will continue to be more and more bitchy towards this guy. And he doesn't even know why they're doing so because they don't know that they're actually creating that self-fulfilling prophecy. Even when it comes to things like 5 love languages or attachment styles, I don't teach my clients to use that to label who they are. So a lot of people take the quiz and they say, oh, I like a physical touch, so give me more physical touch. You like gifts, so I'll give you more gifts. Or attachment styles. Oh, I take this quiz and my partner is an anxious avoidant. So let me treat her as if she's an anxious avoidant, right? That's not what we do in our program. We don't use it to label. We use it as a litmus test to understand what is happening, and we use it to understand what to do about it in the future. So for attachment styles, for example, right? And I made a video on this. So if you look up Geoffrey Setiawan attachment styles, you'll see this video. But we tell you basically, labeling your partner as whatever attachment style is not useful because whether your partner is anxious avoidant or whatever she is, that's just a sign of lack of safety. When you create safety, you'll realize that you create an environment where people don't have to self-preserve anymore. And when people don't have to self-preserve, they have no reason to be anxious. They have no reason to be avoidant anymore. So the whole takeaway here is that do not weaponize good advice in the wrong ways, right? Do not see it like a victim. So when you look at ADHD, when you look at BPD, when you look at depression, when you look at 5 love languages, when you look at attachment styles, when you look at the 4 horsemen, whatever advice you get, do not use it to define who you are. Do not use it to define who your partner is. Do not use it to define what a relationship is. Use it just as a litmus test of where you are and use it as an indicator of what you need to do to overcome it. When you start seeing advice in this different way, you'll start to realize that a lot of advice seems to make a lot more sense and it doesn't leave you in this powerless state of just, imprisoning yourself to what the labels are that are given to you, but you are now free to decide whoever you want to be despite the labels. And when you do that, guys, you realize that these labels, these tests, and all this advice, they're not meant to imprison you. So again, guys, I hope that was really helpful. And again, if you like this series, leave a comment on some of the really common advice you've been getting from friends, from family, from the online community, etc. And I will address it in the next video to call it whether BS or not BS. But with that, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Guys, unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that this is what I call the dark ages of relationship advice. I've been seeing so many more coaches pop up recently, giving advice that sounds amazing on the surface, but actually puts you totally in the wrong direction. And I've seen hundreds of my clients come to my program limping and wounded from after joining these other programs because these other programs, what they teach sounds great. What they teach sounds amazing, but it doesn't really work. In fact, it's not just a lighter version of my program. And not only that, it actually puts you in the wrong direction. So guys, I've made it my life's mission for the last 10 years and probably for the next many decades to cut through so much of this bullshit because I was one of those guys who believed that same bullshit. And my relationship was in the rocks for the first many years with my wife. And that also led me to destroy so many of my relationships. And I didn't even know I was destroying it. So I am doing what I do, not because of money, but because I really want to show you guys the path and the roadmap that I've used to take my relationship to that incredible levels, but also the same process, the same roadmap that I've shown thousands of my clients to show them how the pros actually do it. So if I could give myself some advice back then, I would tell myself, stop playing around. I click the link watch the masterclass. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. And at the end of the masterclass, if what you hear resonates with you, I'll show you how to apply for the program if you're interested in doing so. And I'm so excited to see more of you join my mission to cut through the BS and make marriages great again.